Hey, 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 it's Thursday. Oh, I like that. That's good. I might have to use that if it works every day because every day has day in it. That's good. I'm wide awake today. We're a little early and I am parking and working, and my wife is out for a walk so I can talk. She gave me a hard time last night that I'm too loud. So I've got to see if I can do this more softly, Tom. Does it sound the same when I do it like this?
You need to be you.
I gotta be me. So anyway, this is the point where you would probably be expecting us to give you some incredibly big promise that we're going to change your entire life top to bottom, and by the end of the next 15 minutes, you're going to be infinitely wealthy. We don't believe in that. That's not our goal. Our goal, we're renegades, first of all, and renegades do things a little differently, as you'll see over and over. But as renegades, we think our job is to challenge you, to get you to start thinking about the questions in your world and how to solve the problems in your world. So our goal is to help you figure out that next step, not the huge leap that you're going to take, but the next step. And all week we've been talking about risk, confronting risk. And Tom and I got a really nice email from one of my nephews, Chris, who works at State University of New York up in Oneonta. He's the coordinator of outdoor adventure programs. And Chris is one of the most thoughtful people I've ever met. And it's just a blessing that he's in the family. And Chris sent us a nice email with some thoughts on what we talked about yesterday and the day before. And his real premise, Tom, was the whole idea of actual versus perceived risk. And you started talking about that a minute ago. Walk through what you were saying.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. He kind of leads people, groups in outdoor adventure. And I have some experience in that, actually. And what's interesting about those things, whether you are on what they would call a high ropes or a low ropes, there are really two types of risks that are involved. One is like danger, because at some point on a high risk, you ask people to get up on a pole or up on a wire and do something that could, although they're on belay and everything is safe, there's a feeling like, well, what if the rope breaks? What if this doesn't work? That I could get injured. So there's that risk, a physical risk of harm. And then there's typically you do this with groups of people. Sometimes they're with students at your college, which is a lot of what he does. But then they also do it with like businesses and organizations who come out and do something completely different than what they normally would be. So you might have the CEO who has to put themselves out there in a way that they've never done before, and in front of a group of people. So they've never done it that way, maybe ever, and they've never done it in front of that group of people. And so they're taking the risk of being a little bit vulnerable in front of a group of people that they normally lead.
So the goal, I'm sorry, I was deep in thought. The goal is to take people from comfort to risk in a safe, controlled environment. It's a laboratory, right?
Right.
In the hopes that if you overcome these risks, which we've established for you in a very controlled environment, even though you may not feel they're controlled, if you overcome these risks, you can take that out into the world and try to overcome other risks.
Correct. And I think you also find people who shine in those lights that you might not normally expect to be a leader because they have confidence in it. It's very interesting when you get out there to see, because it's a lot about teamwork, supporting one another, encouraging people to move forward. And what sometimes you find is some of the people who have titles of leaders, when you take them out of their element, they're not as much of a leader as you think, or they're even better than you thought. And there are others within that group who assume leadership roles that you might not have ever expected.
Okay, well, so that's interesting. And so how can we replicate that in our existing world? Because most of us don't have access right now to a ropes course, although I would tell you that some days I feel like I'm on a ropes course.
Yeah. Well, I think in a normal business meeting, there are always those opportunities. You know, if you allow others the freedom to share their thoughts and ideas in a way that maybe they otherwise wouldn't feel comfortable. So if you typically run a meeting like the leader stands up in front and just tells everybody what to do. That's one way. And you could do that on a ropes course. You'd be like the boss, everybody takes it to the boss and says, okay, what are we supposed to do? Or you could find ways to provide everybody with a voice to talk about what their ideas and thoughts are, which is risky because you never know what you're going to get. And once you ask for their advice, what happens if you choose not to use it? So I think there are all those things that come about, and it provides people an opportunity to share. And again, you start to find out who are those people who are willing to take a little bit of risk to share an idea, a concept, a thought that may go against the grain. And sometimes I think identifying that within your team is important to know. Who are those people who are willing to think differently and creatively? And maybe I want to look at them in a different light and think about how can I incorporate that part of their talent into what their role is.
The other thing that strikes me about it is that whole idea that we perceive the risk. So in the note Chris sent us, there are the people who are afraid of doing the ropes course, and they get up and he's got to talk them through it. And he described how he's got the statistics, the analytical data to say, and he was mentioning how our skydiving example, the statistical risk of getting hurt skydiving is actually less than crashing in your car when you drive your car. The perceived risk is so much greater because you're plummeting 2,000, 4,000, 5,000, 10,000, I don't know how many feet. I'm not going to find out. That because the perceived risk, at least to me, is far greater than the return on that investment. But when I look at statistically, I think about, what are you going to bump into when you're coming down towards the earth? It's pretty open unless you find a tree or a telephone line or something like that. Whereas with a car, you got red lights, you got stop signs, you got all those other cars, you got pedestrians, you got bicycles, you got motorcycles, you got pets, you got, emergency vehicles. The statistics certainly line up accurately, but when I'm in a car, because I do it so often, I don't perceive the risk.
Right.
That's where when someone runs a red light, you're like, whoa, they could have hit me. That could happen any day at any time.
Right. Absolutely.
But we put it out of our heads. And I was reading last night an article about someone who was in business taking really big risks. I can't remember his name. I'm totally blanking. But he was saying that success comes from, it was in the book I was reading. I was reading Tribe, totally blanking on his name. But in Tribe, he talks about building a tribe and that leaders in a tribe are successful because they can deal with that perceived risk better than the other people. And that's actually what makes them appealing. The fact that you put yourself out there believing in something, people look at that and go, wow, that's the quality I want. We often call it charisma, right? Charisma being that thing. Wow, we can't put words to charisma really well, but it's like, oh yeah, you have charisma because you're doing things I could never do. You've seen it. I've seen it. We've both been on the stage talking, and afterwards people are like, oh my God, you were amazing. That was so great. I don't know that what I do on a stage is that great. No offense. I'm not sure what you do is that great. I think the thing that they think of is you're doing something that to me is the riskiest thing in the world, because statistics have shown that people would rather die than stand up in front of people and talk.
Right. Yeah.
I don't see that as a risk. I see that as a huge upside. I love the tightrope. I love the fun. So in business, I think the extrapolation here is thinking about what we need to do. Sometimes what we want to do, but what we need to do, and finding a way to mitigate the risk in our minds.
Sure. Well, that's, I think, the thing. And that's the, going back to the analogy of, when you're on a rope or you're on a thin wire and you think, well, what happens if I fall? Well, you're not going to fall. I mean, again, the statistics of falling while on belay are so minimal that it's not, you shouldn't even worry about it.
You keep saying on belay. Have you noticed that people like he's really into this? On belay is the person who's holding the rope that's keeping you tethered. So if you fall, you're in the air, not on the ground, right?
Yeah, I know a little bit about this, actually.
Okay, I don't. So I'm just, I'm trying to, all I know about rappelling and those things is what I learned years ago in Emergency, the TV show, when they had to go down the hills and rescue people.
Yeah,
Roy and John.
That has more risk, perceived risk than this.
Roy and John, I can't remember. Roy DeSoto, John Gage. There you go. Remember them?
It's so
those
funny.
Two guys handled it.
They popped Stokes. Facebook feed. Somebody like, do you remember these guys? I'm like, I don't know what the heck. Yes, I do remember them. But
Stokes and who was the other one? Marco and Captain. What was the captain's name? I totally can't remember his name. I'm blanking.
You're taking a risk by going out and trying to recall all these things that some of them you clearly don't remember.
I'm just trying to be topical because we tend to get too serious. So I'm trying to give it a little life. That's my goal each day. The risk is we get too boring, too serious, and people tune out. We've got to have a shtick. So my shtick is to find something completely random to bring into this every day. It's a risk. Don't get me wrong.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Now, I think what's interesting is that though the not even success, but like the results sometimes of taking that risk, again, whether we've seen it in business, the more comfortable we get with something, the more chance we're going to not be as worried about the perceived risk. We're going to take the chance and we're going to find success. So like when we get up on the stage or someone gets on the stage who's done it 100 times, you're a lot more comfortable than somebody who's like, haven't really done it a lot, not really sure what the results are going to be. I'm putting myself out there. What's going to happen? And I think the more we take risks, the more comfortable we get with it, which is funny. It's a little bit of what he was talking about in that email that you shared was, he's so used to it that it doesn't even think about it. He doesn't think about the perceived risk because he feels like he's done it enough. He has confidence in the way it's set up and the way and the plan and the process that he knows there's going to be success. It's when we step out of that comfort zone. If you've never been up on a wire on belay, or you've never had to stand up in front of a crowd and either lead a meeting or give a presentation, you don't know what the end results are going to be. So the perceived risk is enormous and sometimes makes it really hard to act. And yet once you get through that and you find out that it was either okay or fine or awesome, now you're like, that wasn't so bad. Maybe I need to do it again. I jumped out of a plane, I landed. That wasn't so bad. The views were great. Maybe I'll do it again. And I think that going through the risks and finding success just continues to lead you, I think, to taking more risk. Again, calculated, but always trying to push through it to figure out, like, how comfort am I with this?
Well, I think also about the companies that have stopped taking risks. Those like, Kodak, someone came to them and said, look, I have a way for you to do really cool video. And they said, no, we're going to stick with film. No digital.
Right.
I look at Blockbuster. Oh, that Netflix thing, that's never going to work out. And we see that over and over and over, that companies especially get to a place where they stop taking risks because they become complacent. And I think that's the other edge of the sword is, what is the appropriate risk? When you stop taking risks, when you are just doing the same thing over and over. The sign I've seen in talking to people is when I ask them, are you bored with what you're doing? They're like, oh my God, it's so boring, but it's so safe. Right. And that to me is one of the first signs of trouble for an organization or for a person. If you're not taking some risk today, even if it's a little risk, calling the person you didn't think you'd call or checking on someone or doing anything, if you're taking no risk today, I can tell you, you're not going to grow. You're not going to innovate. You're not going to create, because all of my creativity comes from when I put myself out there and have a new challenge. That's something that I've got to confront. The equivalent of business of going on the ropes course and going, oh man, I got to get across here. I need a team. I need support. I need all these things to help me achieve this result. And people cheering for me. You can do it, Bob. You can make it across there. Yes, that's what gets me to do the things that scare me. If I had enough people cheering for me, I'd probably jump out of an airplane, to tell you the truth.
I think you're probably right. I mean, that support is...
I hope my one brother-in-law didn't hear that, because he wants me to go jump out of an airplane.
Well, our friend Tim, who hosts...
Now Texas Tim, no longer California Tim.
He jumped out of the plane yesterday. How about that? Chrissy was on the other day.
No, he bought, so his jumping out of the plane was buying an iPhone. He's been a Droid guy. This is a big deal. I got a text from Tim last night saying that he bought a new phone. Here's the number. And it's an iPhone. That is a huge shift for Tim.
Well,
but the parallel is exactly right. It's a risk. He doesn't know the system. He was very comfortable with droids. And that's his jumping out of an airplane.
Got it.
It's a great example.
Actually jumped out of the plane. Even Chrissy responded in it. They were having this conversation about how her experience jumping out of planes. So I'm like, oh, how about that? We've got two people who jumped out of a plane who are watching today. I was like, that's odd. And now I find out he didn't actually jump out of a plane.
There you have it. So you ready for the segue, Tom?
I'm always ready for a segue.
Tom and I are doing things that some might perceive as risky. We've created this group, the Ring of Renegades, a Facebook group, and we're doing things differently in that group. And we'd love you to join if you haven't yet. If you have joined, we'd love to see you contribute. Give us your thoughts. Give us your ideas. Tell us what's going on. We want to know that. The other thing that we're doing that has a little bit of a risk is today at 7 p.m. Eastern, we're going to be talking about how to move forward, how to advance your business, whatever you do, your nonprofit, whatever organization you work with, how to take some active steps. We're going to give you 5 insider secrets to how to get more done more easily, how to advance things regardless of the economic climate, the social climate. It doesn't matter. These are foolproof ideas that we have tested, that have been proven that work in every situation. So that's 7 p.m. Eastern tonight. You can find out more about that in the Ring of Renegades, or you can direct message Tom and me. We'll be happy to tell you how to get into that call, which is going to be in our Facebook Live group, or Facebook Live within the Ring of Renegades. So you got to be in the Ring of Renegades to be there. How's that for a segue?
That was pretty good. Not too bad.
And today I'm going to override you. This is the power I have. Yes. The one thing that people can do today, simple, you'll agree with this, take a risk, some little risk. Build the muscle of taking a risk, because the more you take a risk, the better off you'll be. Would you agree, Tom?
Do I have a choice? Yes, I agree.
And join us at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. It's going to be a great discussion. We'll give you some insights. We'll give you some really insider tips and tricks. You will not walk away without some insight that will really change how you go about your days. So with that, Tom, I think it's time to say goodbye. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Have a great day, everyone. We'll hopefully see you tonight. If not, tomorrow morning. Take care.